Hello, and welcome to the Empower Series podcast. My name is Clifton Johnson. I want to welcome our viewers in the United States and around the world. This is where we help people thrive. As you know, Empower Series provides hope, inspiration, education, and connections to resources that will help you take that next step to achieve your goal. Today, I'm really excited because we've got a good friend that's coming back to visit with us, the incredibly knowledgeable Karlos Lyons. He's a licensed professional counselor, and he's going to talk about a topic that is very rarely talked about, but often felt during the holidays, which is mental health. So get your pens and paper ready. I got my pad, I got my pen, get yours, right? Because we're going to talk about this, and he's going to share with us some insights as to how we can navigate through this emotional complexity during this time and keep our right state of mind. Okay, so I'm serious about that. But I also want to let you know that please note that this information is for general knowledge and informational purposes only. It does not constitute professional medical advice. And if you or someone you know is experiencing some type of mental crisis, then seek help from a mental health professional or call the crisis hotline, which is now called the Lifeline. It's 988. You can call 988 or you can text 988. So definitely show love and care for our neighbors, our loved ones, because we all need it, okay? So without any further ado, allow me to bring back my brother, Karlos Lyons. Welcome to the Empower Series, my man.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me back. This is a great opportunity, honestly, and thank you for just giving me space to kind of talk about these things.
Well, man, here's the thing. We're all on this journey together, right?
Right.
And a lot of times people see social media, they see the glamorous side of life,
Right.
But we're all dealing with some type of mental challenge. And Les Brown says that life is a battle over the territory of our mind. So either we're going to give attention to the things that are going well, the things that are not going well, but they're both going on at the same time, right? This is important because 89% of the adult population in the U.S. Is experiencing some type of mental stress during this time of year, and 41% of them actually say that during the holidays it's heightened.
Yeah.
So we had talked about this. This is definitely a topic that we need to, in the Empower series, we need to talk about and really give some insight and solutions to. So I appreciate you coming back and sharing your knowledge with us, man.
Absolutely. My pleasure, actually. And, I was thinking one of the reasons I felt, I guess you could say, a slight burden to talk about this is just knowing that here in the United States, it's been an interesting political season, an election year. And so just coming into the election, which was literally in November, and now we're in December. So fall, winter months, the cold, wherever part of the country you're in, I'm sure it's getting colder in certain parts, unless you're in southern Florida or something. But the change in the weather, the change of the political climate, then you have the consumer culture of the holidays, spend. You don't have enough. That the messaging is like, you don't have enough, you need more.
Right.
It is a very alluring, I guess you could say, message that we get during the holiday season. And then honestly, just thinking through things that I've been experiencing with my own caseload and the topics that have been coming up, which again, post-election conversation, grief during this time, triggers, being around family, being around friends, trying to decide how I'm going to split up my time during the holidays can be a point of contention for people as well. There's just so many things that at a broader scope, it's just like heightened stress, heightened anxiety, and heightened depression.
Man, I'm just thinking about what you're talking about because in any election, it's really interesting that almost half of the voting population is going to have somebody in office that they didn't vote for.
Correct.
Is that not crazy, man? It's like, imagine doing a job where half the people that you're leading don't want you to be leading them. I don't want that kind of job. I don't need that stress, right?
Right.
But then the other thing you mentioned, man, and gosh, I guess sometimes it's emotional because, as you know, I kind of share with you what I'm dealing with. And when you talk about this, I had a cousin that recently passed away the weekend before Thanksgiving. God rest her soul. But this was a cousin that I really connected with when I was in high school, and we would take the summer trips to see them. And in our family, regardless as to where you were, we were always tight. Like my mother and father made sure that we knew all of our first cousins, right, no matter where they lived. And I just had pictures of us playing basketball and having fun. And she started reaching out to me after I went through my diagnosis with prostate cancer. And so she was calling me all the time. And Man, I'm getting kind of emotional, but she was coming up here to Texas to spend some time with me. And the weekend before she came up here, she was in Houston, she passed away.
Mm.
And so yeah, we deal with a lot of different types of, that happens all throughout the year.
Right.
But have it happen during the holiday season.
Yeah.
And it's not just me, it's a lot of people, man. So
Yeah.
so what you're talking about and what you have to give us some type of insight as to how we navigate through that and keep the balance and win this battle over the territory of our minds, right?
Yeah.
Man, this is a blessing, man. I
Yeah.
really appreciate you doing what you do.
Absolutely. And let's kind of, zoom out a little bit and just think of it practically speaking. So we're in the last quarter of the year. And so from a I guess you could say from a business perspective, from HR perspective, from different industries, everybody's trying to do all that end of the year wrap up for the season, going into the next year. I don't even know. Do you know when like the fiscal year actually begins and ends?
It's either on a calendar basis or if you have a business, it might be on a different.
Okay.
So it's always like if you're on a calendar basis, it's December 31st.
So technically, yeah, for a lot of places, it is the end of the year, and then we start a new fiscal year at the beginning of January. So you have that, right? Like you have. Like I've heard clients and had people talk about like the end of the year is crazier, it's busier, there's a lot more going on.
Either you're hitting your goals or you're not hitting your goals. Right?
And so then there's all this reflection, right? There's this introspection that happens as we move into Q4 into the new year. So we're being more introspective. Then when you have this like rapid fire of holidays from Halloween to Thanksgiving and Hanukkah and Christmas and all of the other cacophony of holidays that happened during this last quarter, that's also more introspection about relationships. So I have my business life, like my professional life and what I'm doing as far as like hitting my goals financially and the things that I feel called to in my career or industry. Then I have relationships, the quality or the lack of quality or the lack of quantity of meaningful relationships in my life. That introspection happens for a lot of people. So people feel more lonely or isolated if they're not already engaged in like some active community or growing that, right?
Yeah.
Then you also have just the idea of loss, as you mentioned, right? It's not that loss in any other time of the year doesn't hit hard, but it seems to be particularly different because we have these holidays that are oriented around family and coming together and seeing folks you haven't seen in a while and getting together around a family table. So it kind of heightens and magnifies the fact that, oh, that person that was here across the table from me last year is not here with us, right? Yeah. And so all of these things are kind of heightening it, as you were mentioning it, magnifying it, making it larger, where it is more palpable and we feel it differently. And then also, as I mentioned with the weather, there is a particular diagnosis in the DSM-5, which is the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of mental health,
right?
And it's called seasonal affective disorder. Typically, what that has to do with is seasonal depression, like because of changes in the weather, lack of vitamin D. People are not in the sun as much as they were in the summer or the spring. And if you're not someone that is already dialed into like taking supplements, getting time outside when you can, really beefing that up and like being proactive before winter gets here, we also have people getting sick, right? Like, so we call this cold and flu season and a lot of different immunity issues or autoimmune issues. So really seasonal affective disorder has to do with, honestly, just having seasonal depression because of the weather. That can be a thing for a lot of people as well. They may be not diagnosed for a lot of people, but it does exist.
So what I'm taking from this though is that we all dealing with something, and if we're dealing with something, the last thing we need to do is make ourselves feel guilty because we're dealing with something. Because as you just articulated, there's all kind of stuff out there that is affecting us that that makes us feel emotional at times, right? So that's the first thing I'm taking away from it. So definitely this whole stigma about us dealing with mental crisis. There's some people who are dealing with greater mental crisis that's disabling them
right.
to do the normal functions of a day. But there's, I would say, functionally people who are dealing with some mental stress, they're still functionally able to get up and go to work, do things and have the appearance, and do a selfie and smile and look good, but they're still struggling.
Yeah.
Right.
It's their avatar, right? It's the
Right.
person that they put out into the world. Social media, is we like to present the best version of ourselves. And I think subconsciously and maybe even consciously, the reason we do so much of that self-editing for social media and likes and shares is because we have a desire to be liked and to belong to something. And we know that most people are going to like and love when you went on vacation in Bora Bora, or you just had a baby, or you just got married, or all these like life successes, because that's what we all covet, like the good life, right? Like doing all the things that look good. But we may not, depending on the audience and depending on how you frame it, we may not be as interested in liking and loving, oh man, like I had a really crummy day at work and no one likes me, and this is happening and this stressor is happening, because that doesn't sound as appealing as, sharing the highlight reel. Right.
Yeah.
So we edit ourselves to put the version of ourselves that we want people to believe is us 90 to 100% of the time.
And it also, you hear the thought that who wants to be around a negative person?
Right. They consider it being negative if you're honest about. And I think I think social media, there are lots of platforms out there, and there are people that have built audiences around different types of topics and brands and a niche, right? So there is a place for that. But I also think when we talk about toxicity or negativity or things that aren't so positive on social media, it's the way you frame it and you discuss, hey, I'm going through this and I'm human, right? And let's be more honest about our struggles and our daily things, and then talking about like where we can go outside of social media to actually do that healing work. I mean, because social media can be a very cool place to share and express aspects of your life, and can be very cathartic. But then also, are you going to do more like in-depth healing work one-on-one with someone? If you can go to a mental health professional, if you can go to a psychiatrist or a psychologist for medication management or assessments, if you can sit down with a therapist to really unpack your narrative and your trauma, are you doing that work as well? Are you leaning into any kind of practices that can be helpful for your wellness long-term outside of building an audience? Because we know a lot of people that build audiences on social media, or just in general, celebrities who have millions of followers and feel spiritually and emotionally bankrupt.
Yeah, dude, I'm trying to remember who told me that recently. It will come to me because he talked about having all of this money. Oh no, it was Deion Sanders.
Wow. Yeah.
Deion Sanders mentioned one time before, I think he was asked on a short, what was your lowest point in life? And he said when he thought he was suicidal. It was the time where he was playing two sports. He was on basketball and football. And he made a comment that, publicly he was a success. But personally, it was at a time where he didn't have the ideal relationship with his daughters. And that it was crushing him. And he said, I don't care who you talk to. Anybody that's making a lot of money is doing well externally, but internally they're struggling with something, which is some real talk. So before we get into the solutions, I want to share with you something that I've experienced, right? Like when you came in today, you asked me how I was doing. I feel a tremendous sense of being authentic with people that I care about, instead of just saying, hey, I'm doing fine. Right, so I gave you both sides.
Right, you did.
I told you some things I'm struggling with, but then I told you some things I'm grateful for.
Yeah.
And that comes from a couple of things. I had a friend who is doing well, right, from the outside. I'm sure he struggles with his own personal things, but I asked him how he was doing, and his comment, he has a dry sense of humor. He said, look, it could be worse. Then he said it could be better too.
Right.
Which is true. So when people ask me how I'm doing, I always say, hey man, I'm winning because I woke up today. Right. And Michael Collier says, anytime we've woke up, we've already won. But then I also say, I'm struggling. Now, I had a cousin named Rabbit and they called him Big Chief. But that was his saying. We made a little button that said struggling as usual. And so that's some real talk. And even Frederick Douglass said, hey, there would be no progress without struggle.
Right.
And so the realness is that we're all struggling in one way or another.
Yeah.
So I feel more authentic to say, hey, I'm winning, I'm still struggling, right?
Yeah.
It's both, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so what are some of the solutions for the different types of mental stresses or complexities that people are running into in different phases of the year? Like I said, like 89% of the adult U.S. population is experiencing some type of stress. That's almost 90%, man.
Mm-hmm.
Very few people are getting away scot free.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you navigate that? I know in your profession you see a lot of people who've taken the action of seeing you,
Right.
but there's so many more people who are
Who
not
not,
getting that
right.
professional help. So what do you say about that?
Okay, so let me start with the area regarding just like the climate, right? The social climate, the political climate, the social climate, just where we're at in time as a country and as a people around the world. Like there's always global issues that we are encountering, and I want to start with our digital diet. Okay, so there's such a term as attention economy, and there are so many things that are vying for your attention day in and day out. Again, from your cell phone to with your smart devices like your tablets, your television, your laptop, phone. There's just so many ways that we can always be connected to something to grab our attention through ads and commercials and things that pop up on our screen. And then AI is so intuitive now. We can have conversations right here, and then lo and behold, we look up and our phone is already kind of like curating something that was related to something we were saying. Okay, so the attention economy is not going anywhere. We do need to understand like how we steward our relationship with technology is going to be important in the years to come. Okay, but when we think about old school, I think about my grandfather or just my grandparents in general. They came up in a generation where the TV and like the news, like having the news on 24/7 or just having some kind of information about what's going on in the world coming at them was like really important. I remember my grandfather would always have CNN on, and he was probably the
Gotta
first.
know what's happening.
Gotta know what's happening.
Right.
He always kind of was in the know about things, and it affected them. It probably affected them similarly that it does to us now, but because we have greater access through these devices like the cell phone, laptop, it's just different. Where
Like what I'm looking at now.
right, like they can turn the television off, but then we're always on. And again, as with attention economy, smartphones, apps, everything that is done with these smart devices is curated and created in a way to keep you wanting to come back. It's like if you go to a casino, to the slot machine, and you play the numbers and you see the little colors and all that stuff, and you get the matchup, that rush of dopamine that comes into the brain is like, let's do it again because we can win again, like going to Chuck E. Cheese or something like that. And so the same kind of brain chemistry is happening with the phone as well, with the laptop, with the smart devices. If we are not cognizant of it, we're just on autopilot, and we'll realize like, man, I just wasted an hour or two just staring at my phone. Okay.
Man, and Prince, I was like, watching another short, right? So Prince mentioned in 1999 to be careful about technology in the computer. He said, remember, you can use the technology, you can use a computer, but make sure it doesn't use you.
Right.
And
right.
I think it's safe to say that right now there's a large percentage of the population where technology is using us.
Oh, absolutely.
It's using us. Like you said, everything is about how long can something grab our attention.
Correct. And I'm old enough and young enough to remember two things, right? I remember growing up as a 90s kid. I remember growing up like going to play outside like for hours with my cousins, riding our bike through the neighborhood, going to each other's house.
I remember that too.
All of that, and like the Nintendo and the Sega Genesis and all that stuff was new. The internet was around, obviously. It came out in the 80s. But all of it was still fairly new, and it was still exciting and interesting. But we also had this like still grasp of like going to do things outdoors and using our imagination and arts and sports and all these different kind of things, which kids still do that today, but their engagement with social media and with smart devices is just way different than it was when I was a child, because there was no access to the global world when I was on my Nintendo or my little VTech laptop computer, right? There was just me and that gadget. But now, like every gadget is connected to everything in the world. And so I would say just as we have evolved as a humanity and with our engagement with the technology, we definitely have to be cognizant of what, Prince is talking about, just our responsibility, because it's neutral. Technically, it's neutral. In a lot of ways, if we would just have self-control, if we would learn how to exhibit self-control and be cognizant of what we're doing, this doesn't have to control me. But we also see that so much of our life is outsourced to technology to make things more convenient, to make things easier. And that's the reason we have inventions happening all the time to make life easier and more comfortable and more convenient for us to do things. And so, like, at some point, cash will probably be obsolete, right?
Yeah.
We're moving everything to, paying by
Digital.
just digital, just scanning thing, So we have to be very cognizant as we grow as a society, how we engage with that. That would be the first thing I would say. What that could simply mean is, for me personally, and this is what I can admonish people, is put your phone and all the gadgets out of your room when it's time for bed. Like, don't wake up to it and don't go to bed with it. Okay, that's just one place you can steal back some territory. Can I at least have 8 hours? A boundary, yeah, setting a boundary with it. Can I at least have 8 hours of rest uninterrupted where I am not inundated by things that are happening in the world? I power my stuff down at night. I honestly do that just because what's going to happen while I'm sleeping? I mean, there may be things happening, but I need to get the rest in order to be able to tackle what's happening, whatever that is, because we have created this thing of like burning the midnight oil, being up all night, just doing, working. And I have clients who have said to me, like, I'm making the dollar, like I am earning money and I'm earning a paycheck and I'm doing the things as far as like financially that I've been wanting to do to secure this kind of lifestyle that I want, but at what expense, right? I'm spending less time with my family. I'm spending less time doing things that other things that I enjoy just to do this. And that's the convenience of technology. And so we have a work culture. The work sector is also pushed that. So for me, coming out of corporate and going back into private practice, I have really seen the difference in my nervous system and in my physical body, because I am not necessarily being pressured by someone above me to do this and do that and these metrics and these numbers. And so people in corporate settings need to have boundaries when it comes to work. Like, I'm not on the clock right now. I might need to power my computer off. But some people are afraid to do that. You'd be surprised how many people are like, I need to make this work. And so they have this expectation. Their employer has this expectation they can be on the clock all the time, right? Yeah. That's not healthy. Can I continue?
Yeah.
Or you want to say something right there?
I do want to say this though, man. I think all of the things you're saying are on point, and just to acknowledge that these things may be known.
Yeah.
But I think it's really interesting in a book called Outwitting the Devil, right? Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. He talks about what the devil uses to win, and he uses distractions.
Distractions, yeah.
Because we all have a purpose.
Correct.
Right, and our goal is to find out what that purpose is and then live it.
Right.
But in this book, which is a fictional book, but if the devil is able to put something in our mind to distract us,
right, and
then have that be like a habitual habit,
correct,
where we're unconsciously just doing it, like we're brushing our teeth, we just do it, then basically he's won, right, or she's won, the devil, whoever that is, because we should all be living a purposeful life.
Yeah.
But it's easier said than done. It is work to set up boundaries.
It is
work to set up a routine in the morning that prioritizes your self-care.
Correct.
Instead of jumping on to getting ready with the day, right? And looking at your calendar and what you got to do.
Right.
Whether it's an hour or whatever that is. So with that being said, I do want you to continue to talk, but if there's any solutions, in addition to, say, putting technology out of your bedroom.
Yeah.
But that's hard because a lot of people use their phone as their alarm clock.
Get an old-fashioned alarm clock.
You see what I'm saying?
Get an old-fashioned alarm clock. They still make them.
So what are the things you can do? I like that. It's like setting the boundaries. Are there any other boundaries that you see that can be set dealing with this
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I do want to share more of those in consideration of like what you do with your time. So that's another thing, doing a time audit. So I'm using a lot of terms that I use in session, but again,
Okay.
attention economy. So again, that has to do with where your attention is going. And then the digital distractions that you have are on autopilot. So really becoming more cognizant of that, setting boundaries with you're going to bed and waking up with gadgets. That was the first one. But really just looking at how you engage your time. Okay. So time auditing has to do with, let me just take an inventory of how I use this device or use my television or et cetera, and begin to see how much time in my day has been used up, or we could even say wasted, because it is an energy exchange as well. I want to make that clear. Like when we are distracted by a lot of things on our phone, and there are a lot of great things that happen on our devices, right?
Like this on the phone, right?
This is going to be on a device, right? But just knowing obviously what energy that I'm putting into something over time, how it is taken away, or it may be adding to what I'm doing on a daily basis. And I want to also say the reason I want to kind of like make it very plain why it's important is because our use of technology can increase anxiety, can increase symptoms of depression because of what we're feeding ourselves. So our digital diet. But a time audit is simply you just literally starting from whatever time you wake up, if it's 6:30 all the way to bedtime, 10:30, 11, how have I used my time today? I mean, even in our phones, they have these
It tells
metrics,
you how much you've used.
how much you've used your phone. So you
Isn't
can
that crazy?
you can look at that like, man, I need to cut down or scale down my time of using my phone to do something else,
Yeah.
right? Like reading or journaling or cooking an actual home cooked meal, going for a walk. And we'll get into some of the coping skills, but I just want to say the time audit, look at how you're using your time. Because before you make a change, you have to have awareness. The first step to the change process is awareness, contemplation that there is actually a problem. So I am presenting my case for why this is a problem to your viewing audience, your listening audience. And now we need to look at where it is in my personal life that I'm seeing this problem exist.
Be mindful.
Being
right?
very mindful.
And when you were talking about a time audit, I think it's interesting because we're all given 24 hours a day.
We got the same amount of time.
Yeah, and so I used to say this when I was young, like the difference between people who we perceive as being more successful than us and people who are not as successful is how we're using the 24 hours.
Correct.
And the same goes with your money.
Correct.
Like doing a time audit and doing a money audit. Like that will tell you everything. And I know the pastor told me once, and I'll let you get back to what you're saying. He said, if you really want to know about a person, you can go out on dates and do all this other stuff,
Right.
ask questions. But if you just do an audit
Yeah.
on where they spend their money
Yep.
and how they spend their time,
Correct.
that will tell you
Everything
everything.
you need to know. Yeah.
And if anyone is kind of resistant in being that transparent with you, it's usually because they're doing something that they kind of like probably shouldn't be doing.
Correct. Correct.
So
yeah.
I think when you talk about a time audit, that really hit home with me.
Mm.
And these things, and I hope you're taking notes if you're watching this. So you can definitely watch this again, because if we apply even just one of these things, it will give us some heightened awareness.
Absolutely. And just to kind of, emphasize what you're saying as well, I think I've seen in my personal life when I made that shift, when I did that time audit and I began to say, you know what, I'm going to force myself 30-minute increments. Because one of the things I think is very alluring about social media and phones and all that is when we want to be labored things that we have to do, and we don't want to do those things, it makes procrastination like very easy, and we want to be entertained. So we like to be entertained. Yeah. And that's what the craving to look at our phone and engage with the devices is all about. Like, I just want to escape for a minute, be distracted, do something fun. But procrastination obviously can be both. It's not just someone being lazy. It can just be about feeling overwhelmed by the task. So breaking up the task into smaller increments. If there's something that you feel like you can't tackle, just say, I'm gonna give myself 15 to 30 minutes to try to knock out one aspect of this task, right? And then I can give myself a little brain break, right? I can surf the web for a minute, 1 minute, 5 minutes. I don't really know what that looks like for every person. That can be customized to the person, but incentivize it, right? I had 30 minutes of focus, and then I'm gonna give myself a couple of minutes of just distraction, but I'm gonna get back into it. And over time, you can see how you can lengthen that period of time where it's not like I have to be coddled by my gadgets for every 30 minutes. I can take hours to actually do work. And then you feel a sense of fulfillment when you get tasks done on your to-do list. So the other part of the time audit is also simultaneously, writing down your to-do list in order of importance, or things that you feel like high priority on my list that I want to tackle first. If you work better by saying, I want to do the easiest task first, get those out of the way, do that. But just notice how you're able to kind of check things off of the list. Because what we're not saying, Clifton, is that recreation, downtime, play is unimportant. But with technology and the way that we use it a lot of time, it takes up more time than it should, because we're not, and then we're mad at ourselves because we're not hitting our goals, or that we're behind schedule, or we're waking up late every day and we just feeling like unfulfilled in life. Some of that could be harnessing your energy to get your work done, and then emphasize play afterwards.
Well, here's what I was thinking when you were saying that. Number one is we got to be intentional about our play.
Intentional about our play.
We have to be intentional about our downtime, because one of the things that I'm doing is I'm riding my Peloton every day. So
Okay.
I want to do that for the next.
What do you do
for
on
next
there?
year.
Like just different
I
workouts?
I just ride.
Oh, you just ride?
I
Okay.
just
Okay.
ride it because I know Phelps, the swimmer, right?
Yeah.
One time I read an article and he said, "Yeah, I'm going to work out 365 days this year." And he said, "Because I want to do some phenomenal things. If you want to do some phenomenal things, if you want to accomplish some phenomenal goals, you got to do some phenomenal things." And so I thought, 30 minutes. Like, there's 30 minutes in my day that I'm just wasting. So why not just be intentional about it? And I say that because when people think they want to do something that's like not thinking, they want to watch TV or do something or look on their phone, but yet they don't have time to do self-care. They don't have time to meditate. They don't have time to journal. They don't have time to work out. It's like, now I'm thinking they can be a little bit more intentional, because how is watching a TV show or watching a sporting event of millionaires playing a game of which you get no compensation from, right? How is that helping you in your self-care? You know what I'm saying? And it's so interesting, the emotion we put into it. Like, I don't want to offend anybody, but the Dallas Cowboys not winning as much this season. It's like, that is emotion. That's a mental health strain, right?
You're right. You're exactly right.
But how important is that compared to your family?
Correct.
Or the other things that are important to you, like your health? And so I don't know.
Man, no, I don't have anything to add to that except you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that. I think that's exactly right, which brings me to the next part. That's a perfect segue. So we're looking at how we spend our time. Now, what is it when we look at what we're spending our time on, the amount of time we're doing every day? What is it that we're looking at? Like when we're on the phone, we're looking at television, we're on the laptop. How much of that is devoted to work? How much of that is devoted to entertainment? And then when we look at our entertainment, or what we call news as well, I think it's important for people to kind of do a detox of things they follow. If they're following a lot of stuff that triggers them and really gets them stressed out, for me, I say unfollow it, or really have a really concentrated amount of time that you spend to that, and then let the rest of your time be for other things. All right. So if you're a person that just loves the news and you wake up to alerts about the stock market, and you wake up to what's happening in Gaza, and you wake up to what's happening on the political scene in the US, and then you have this going on, that is stressful. There's
nothing in that's not stressful, man. Like, everything you mentioned has a stress level to it, right?
Right. So if you are waking up and you're inundating your nervous system and your mind with that every day, it can cause stress. It can cause anxiety to build. And what happens is it becomes like an accumulative effect on your body, right? Like, so every little thing compounds, right? So then there was this that happened in the news. Then somebody cut me off in traffic. Then it took me 30 minutes longer to get to work than normal. Then my boss was tripping. You see what I'm saying? Like, all these things compound. It creates a higher level of stress and anxiety in the body. And then it's hard for you to come down off of that every single day if you're continuing to have that in your system. So it becomes more acute, and then it becomes chronic, where it's just like this long extended period of stress, and you start feeling things pop off in the body. So when it comes to like news cycles, when it comes to the kind of people that you follow on social media, again, neurologically, you are rewiring your brain based on the things that you watch and give your attention to.
Now, that is deep, my brother, because that's a good point. we're creating was neuroplasticity.
Yes, one of my favorite words. Yeah.
Channels in our brain.
Yes.
That becomes like great way of looking at it is like if you're taking a path through the wilderness, the more you take that path, it creates like a weir, like a you're
A trail.
a
Like
trail.
yeah.
And it's like, and then all of a sudden, you're more inclined to follow that trail as opposed to take the road less traveled.
Correct.
And if this trail that has been embedded in our minds,
So
which
good.
is based on, the capitalistic world trying to separate you from your money, or trying to
Yeah.
separate you from your peace of mind, thinking that you have an abundance of within you,
Mm-hmm.
but you need to buy something else to be happy, right? That's hard now. Now, if we want to talk about changing that, that's kind of even more uncomfortable now. To get off of a path that has been leading you to stress, brokenness, and just unhealthy mental thoughts. Now to try to change that becomes a very difficult thing to do. It's easier said than done.
Yeah,
right?
but I also want to give the encouragement. The good news is it is possible. It can be done. The word that you used earlier, to be intentional about that. I love how you laid that out, because you're right. Those grooves in the brain, those pathways, those neurological pathways in the brain are deep seated. And so you reinforce and you reinforce and you reinforce, and it creates your sense of self. Okay, your sense of self and identity, and the things that you believe are core and I guess you could say true about you. I don't know if you have seen the movie Inside Out 1 or 2.
Man, I gotta watch it because you told me about it. Look, okay, it's on my list. I'm gonna go see Inside Out, right?
Okay. So the second one, Inside Out 2, focuses more on this new kind of cluster emotion, anxiety, and this how it was affecting this young lady. But I just love the fact that in this movie they take such a strong position on how we develop a sense of self and our core beliefs based on things that we think about. And so when I'm talking about the phone and television and all different digital things that we can get our hands on, as we continue to reinforce and watch and listen to and absorb certain atmospheres and certain types of people and conversations, our mirror neurons are being affected as well. So we begin to mirror that behavior.
Got you.
Am I leaning in good? Okay.
No, you
Yeah,
good.
okay.
You good.
So we begin to mirror that behavior. We begin to take on those characteristics, take on that conversation, take on that language of what we're listening to, and then inherently we take on the stress and the embodied emotions of that as well. And that's through our digital devices.
Man, so I'm always looking at solutions, right? And so to battle that or counter that, then we've got to be mindful of what we're taking in.
Correct.
And so where we may have the news in the background on the TV, maybe we need to have what's a better
lo-fi.
option? Right. What a better option is music.
Yeah, lo-fi,
right?
jazz, or that's my vibe. Yeah.
Or a better option might be some positive, empowering information.
Correct.
Or educational
Correct.
information.
Correct.
And then also
Audiobooks.
Yeah, and you
things
talk
like
about doing things, activity. So if you have like a habit of doing something that's not empowering, and then your intention is now to change that habit. Changing that habit and doing something new, and then let's say reverting back to the old behavior, is not a bad thing. You just got to realize that if you're
Correct.
mindful,
Love
and
it.
then do the new behavior.
Yes,
And
love
if
it, love
if
it.
you're working out, that's like doing an arm curl.
Correct.
It's like the more you do it, the more it's going to develop. So if you get off track
Correct.
to a change that you're trying to make, don't beat yourself up. Just
Correct.
get back. Once you notice it, get back on track.
I love what you just shared, because in addiction counseling, which what we're talking about can be a part of like an umbrella of addiction, of
right,
behavioral patterns. But I tell clients all the time that sometimes relapse is a part of the prevention process. So if you are making a relapse prevention plan to say, I don't want to go around this cycle again, but then as you just said, sometimes I may get off. It's just a matter of acknowledging it, not feeling some level of guilt and shame, but just getting back on the new course. Because as the new course is reinforced and you continue to give more attention to that, it becomes more of a habit for you, and it's easier to do it the more that you continue in that lane. I love also how you use fitness, because although I'm not like a fitness guru or anything, I think I try to lead a healthy life and I like to work out. And so in general, when it comes to lifting weights or doing some kind of physical exercise, there's going to be some level of tension. And there has to be an admission in yourself, like this tension doesn't feel comfortable right now, but it's good for my long-term gains. And so even with this creating of the new habit, it's going to take some time. It's going to take some intentionality, and it may not be comfortable right away. But again, it becomes muscle memory the more that you do it, because this is ground zero, right? Our brain.
Yeah.
Everything starts and ends there.
Man, I'm thinking we should do a series of podcasts. but I do want you to talk about this, right, before we run out of time. So we're talking about the holiday season.
Yes.
Right? And so one of the biggest things during the holiday season is the getting together of family.
Yes.
Or the lack of getting together.
Yes.
Right? And then the emotional thoughts around the goodness or the badness, or, I got to be with so-and-so again, or this is another year where so-and-so's not here, or I'm alone. It's like there's all these myriads of thoughts that a person can have around this time of year.
Correct.
So talk a little bit about that. What are some of the solutions, or how can you help someone who's dealing with this holiday season again?
Yeah.
And they're really thinking about the relationships or the lack of relationships during this time of year, and that's having a negative mental effect on them.
First, I would like to say that if you are someone that has experienced a recent loss, or you're grieving a loved one, or there is someone in your life that is ill or dealing with some kind of challenge, and you care for them, or you have some strained relationships, that my heart automatically goes out to you, and I empathize with that, because I know that's a part of the human struggle and the human condition, is that we have, these kind of things that happen that are just not fun. But I also want to say that do not neglect feeling the emotion. I think what we do a lot of times is we try to drown out the feeling. And I speak from a place of knowing people in my life personally that, may lean this way. And we try to do things. We turn to alcohol. We turn to substances. We turn to porn.
We try to mask it.
We try to mask it with these maladaptive coping skills. And that is not addressing the emotion. That is trying to escape it and try to cover it up and go into something else. So I would definitely say address the emotion that you feel, and feel it, because it needs to pass through you. I know that may sound weird, but you need to allow the emotion to come through the body. You need to feel that. So if you need to cry about that, cry. If you need to go to a rage room and, knock some stuff and break some stuff, do that. If you need to go to a boxing class and just go punch it out on a punching bag, feel those emotions, do those things that are necessary to get that emotional energy out of the body. Don't ignore it and try to cover it up with maladaptive coping skills. The other piece is when it comes to advocacy, self-advocacy, this is what makes boundaries important, okay? If you are saying, I need to advocate for myself what I need, first of all, being very clear about what my expectations are. What is it that I'm able to handle? What is my bandwidth? Do I have the capacity to deal with X, Y, and Z? Or so-and-so this holiday, right? What is my bandwidth? And are there any lingering conversations that have not been had that need to be had before we get to the holiday, before we get to the family table?
Yeah.
Can we lean
Deal
into
with it in advance,
can we
right?
lean into confrontation in a healthy manner? We don't have to be, cussing and fighting and, calling the police and all that kind of stuff, but we definitely need to say, I need to have a conversation with this person. I need to sit down and just kind of set up some boundaries or some expectations of how we get through the holiday season together. That's very important. If you are struggling with that, about how to communicate those boundaries, you're feeling timid or you're feeling afraid of like what's going to happen as a result of doing that, it sounds like you might be more concerned with their response, like how the other person is going to respond to what I need to say or what I need to do for myself, versus advocating for what I need. And so asking yourself, am I worth what I'm advocating for?
Yeah.
Is it worth it? Am I worth it? And is this worth it to go through this? And if it is, if you say yes to that, then you have to follow through. And that's where a mental health professional might be helpful. If you can't get to a mental health professional or you don't feel comfortable doing that, there are tons of resources. One of my favorite personal resources is a book, and it's called Set Boundaries, Find Peace.
Okay.
Set Boundaries, Find Peace. And the author's name is Nedra Tawwab. So that's Nedra. I believe it's Tawwab. Nedra Tawwab. And
Spell the last name again.
Tawwab. I believe that's how you spell it and pronounce it. But set boundaries, find peace, and how to have relational holiness for yourself, basically reclaiming your peace. And that is just year round. But I think what I love about her book is that it's so practical. You know, when we think about books, a lot of time we think about a story from beginning to end, or like when we think of even informational writing, there's a thesis and all this stuff to kind of, I guess you could say, support that thesis. But her book is practical in the sense of it has those kinds of elements to it. There are stories, and she is making a case for certain things when it relates to boundaries. But she has like these literally like line by line. These are things you can say in a context with setting a boundary with your spouse, setting a boundary with your niece, or, you know, setting a boundary with the employer. And they're like line for line words, phrases, ways that you can kind of conceptualize things you need to say and how to articulate that. And if that doesn't help, I also feel that in addition to that book, you can write things down, or also talk it out on your phone. Like do a voice memo, like talk it out, get the finer points, make sure that the communication is very concise, and don't assume that the people are going to understand if you don't explain it to them. Like assume they don't know and over communicate. But yeah, do a voice memo to yourself, or journal, or write out your thoughts to kind of conceptualize how you want to explain it. And then just also knowing for your own personal mission and vision for your life, what are my core values? What do I hold dear? What matters to me? What I'm looking forward to advocating for. And then you teach people in your sphere of influence how they can get with the program.
Yeah.
Basically.
So it's really interesting what you're doing, man. I like what you're doing because you're talking about different levels of resource. So one is talking to a professional, which is that's number one. I do that in my industry where someone's talking about, hey, I need to get a will done. Can I go online and download some things? It's like, yeah, you can do that, but go to a professional, go to an attorney, go to a counselor. There's value in that. And whether it's part of your employee assistance program, or it's part of your medical benefit, or if you don't have a benefit and you don't have the cash to pay for it for a counselor, that's important. You should have enough money to pay $30 for a book, right?
Right.
So set boundaries, find peace.
And it's holiday time, so I'm sure it's discounted.
Gift, right?
Right.
There's a lot of books out there that are available, even free ebooks or whatever.
Right.
But that's a good book recommendation. But then the other thing you mentioned is journaling, right? Journaling and writing your thoughts down, or voice memoing, that's great. When you were talking about emotion and feeling that emotion, it's really interesting because my counselor was telling me that I need to keep an emotion journal, right?
Yeah.
Because I tend to say, it doesn't matter what you feel, just get it done, right?
Right. No.
But to your point, emotion is motion.
It exactly in the word. Yeah.
And the problem usually comes from either suppressing emotions.
Correct.
Or I would say, you know how you have a water hose and all of a sudden you clamp it, you got this pressure building up. So it could be, if you're feeling a lot of tension,
correct,
it could be because you're holding on to some emotion and you're not like allowing yourself to feel it and get through you.
It has to.
That's what I was thinking about when you're talking about emotion, is like, feel it, let it come.
Let it come out.
Don't suppress it. And my daughter is like, she's such a blessing. She's given me so many different clues to how to deal with my emotions. And another book is The Lost Art of Listening.
Ooh.
Which is have you read that book?
I've not read it, but it sounds
That's a powerful
great.
book. It's like, it's listening without judgment.
Yeah.
And that is a gift to give somebody that is overlooked and doesn't cost much, besides just you doing the work of being more concerned about what that person is feeling, and what that person is saying, instead of what you want to say.
Correct.
Right?
Correct. I mean, I love how you explained it, especially the water hose and like having it clamped down so tight that you're just not allowing it to come out, because that's exactly what I mean when we talk about allowing it to come through. I think we have had this mind-body disconnect that we're so focused, and some of it is cultural messaging that we've got in our culture. And then as Black and brown people, I know that we have, spiritual language for a lot of these kinds of things, and just pray about it and all that kind of stuff. But the misnomer is that we weren't supposed to feel them in the first place. Like that's not true. Right. I think we were created with this capacity for emotional intelligence, that we should utilize it. That's what separates us from every other animal. right? Everything in
yeah.
creation, like we have this capacity to feel intently. We're sentient beings, like other creatures do have feeling, but it's heightened. Like it's more, it's elevated, I would say. And so feel that, experience that, go with that. It's trying to tell you something.
Yeah.
It's trying to tell you something. It's there for a reason. If it wasn't there for a reason, then you wouldn't feel it.
Well, man, yeah, I'll tell you what, you've got to come back. But before we wrap this up, you were talking about doing a podcast, right?
Yeah.
So, what, do you have a name for it yet?
So the name that I've been kind of playing with has been Life's All Medicine. Life as in like the word life, then apostrophe S, Life's All Medicine. In other words, every aspect of living and being in life can be a form of medicine. It's just like knowing when to use the right prescription.
Okay, I like that. Life's all medicine. Life's all medicine. That's cool. So we're going to be looking for that. I'm going to share with you some resources that can help you get
Thank
that
you.
podcast going.
I appreciate
man.
that.
And I appreciate you just being on this podcast. Now, here's the thing. I took a lot of notes. Hope you guys are taking a lot of notes. I got some good stuff here. Removing technology from our room, doing a technology audit as well as a time audit, right? Distancing. I can't even talk right now, but distancing ourselves from technology. Addressing our emotions and letting our emotions go flow through us. Being a self-advocate for ourselves, right? The books, the resources, all of those things are going to be links underneath the video. And I know we started this conversation talking about during this time of holiday season, but it's also the time of the end of the year.
Yep.
It's also a change in leadership.
Correct.
In politics. There's a lot of different things that are going on that we could probably talk about over a series.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
But I do want to. I want to give you an opportunity to kind of give us like your core message as we end this particular podcast, as we wait for your next one in Life's All Medicine, right?
Yeah. I just want to say that your life, the people that are listening, your life matters. Your mental health matters. Your heart matters. I don't want to forget how integral listening to the heart is as well. It's not just brain stuff, it's heart stuff, which is where the emotional current comes from. And so if that matters, you have worth and you have value. If you are not sure about your worth and your value as an individual, it may be time to begin to explore what's at the root, what is inhibiting your ability to see yourself clearly, to see yourself as worthy, to see yourself as valuable. Because when you're able to do that, all the things that we just talked about become even more important to you because you see that as value. My life is valuable. If I want to be the best version of myself, I will be conscious of how I spend my time. I will be conscious of who I let into my sphere of influence. I will be conscious of what goes in and out of my heart and my stress levels. So I just want to say that big picture, all the things from whether we talk about political climate to seasonal affective disorder to attention economy, any of it, it's all about starting back with you and the focus on self-care and how you can advocate for that in your daily life.
That's a drop the mic moment, man. So I want to share with you something personally, and then I'm going to close this out. So was it last weekend? Yeah, last weekend I was going through some things, right? I was having a lot of fear and a lot of doubt. And I thought it was really interesting because I told myself, man, if I'm experiencing this, that's a reflection of how much I'm really believing in God. It's my faith, right? Then at that time, a friend of mine from Lubbock called me. Her name was Ida, and Ida's my mother's name.
Wow.
So she called me, and as I was sharing that with her, she shared with me 2 screen prints that she went to some type of church workshop, and it had the heading said, God values us more than we value ourselves. And it had all of these statements of, I can't do it, I'm tired, like all of these negative I statements. And right next to it, it had every Bible verse that contradicted those statements. And it talked about realizing that we are positioned in a place to shine our light.
Right.
And so that I think that came to me. I thought, man, so what if I had a perspective of looking for how, if you believe in God, right?
Right.
How God has it, like there's a plan.
Correct.
And then that Sunday, I listened to a TD Jakes message
Okay.
that said collaboration with God.
Wow.
and then on Monday, something else happened, and I started realizing like people are coming into my life. And so I say that because as you were talking, I was thinking about how we met. How we met because I met a lady that worked at Lifeology.
Yes.
And she
Yes.
introduced me to you and
Yes.
thought that us collaborating would be a good thing to do. You've been on the program several times. And I'm sitting here across from you thinking that you are pouring not only into me, but into the Empower Series community. And it's a setup, right?
Yeah.
It's a setup. So life's medicine, it's out there for us, right? If we look at it from a perspective that what's happening to us, even though we may have bad feelings about it, but it's really for our good. If we can work through it, get the resources around us, whether it's talking to a professional counselor, whether it's reading a book, whether it's doing some journaling, it can all work out for its good if we let it get through us, man.
Absolutely.
So you've been a blessing to the Empower Series community. You've been a blessing to me. I appreciate always you taking a portion out of your life.
Thank you. Sincerely, thank you for the opportunity.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do what I can to help you get your podcast going. So we're going to talk about resources offline. But I want to thank you also for watching this program because this is part of your time audit, right? You taking the time to listen to this and hear the message that you're supposed to hear and then apply it in your life is going to help you feel better and see meaning in your life, but it's also going to help the people around you who are looking at you, right? You're going to empower other people because you are the Empower Series. So again, I want to thank you. Stay connected with us. If you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, please subscribe. If you want to join and get more of the behind-the-scenes look at the Empower Series, you got to join. But email me at thrive@empowerseries.com if you have any feedback or information you want to give me. Go to our website at www.empowerseries.com. You can take our survey to give us some feedback. Or if you want to donate, you can click donate in the top left-hand corner. Or you can text donate or give to 214-225-6337. But again, I want to thank you. Have a good holiday season, even in the midst of this emotional complexity. And stay connected with us. Until we meet again, be empowered and inspired to thrive.